Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with episode number 129 of the Yakking Show. This is the show for awakening you to new perspectives for the changing world we're finding ourselves in. As always, we have interesting guests. Today will be no exception, but it's not my job to introduce guests. So first, let me introduce my co-host, Kathleen Beauvais from Waterloo. Kathleen is from Tech Solutions, and she is the lady who can help you with all your IT development needs. So Kathleen, welcome to the episode 129 of the Yakking Show. How's Waterloo today?
It's doing great, Peter. Thank you so much for that intro. Appreciate it. And thank you all so very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. His name is Roy Strauss, and I'm very excited to have him on the show because he's coming to us from New Jersey. Welcome, Roy. How are you today?
Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So Roy, you are the founder of the Strauss Consulting Group, and you provide a full range of consulting services in supply chain management, material handling, logistics, warehousing and distribution, and manufacturing. For our audience, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to establish your own consulting company that is now, 38 years old?
Yes, 38 years.
Congratulations on that.
Okay, so just a little bit on a high level first. What I'm sharing here is not to talk about me, but share experiences so your audience can pick up on what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I've done and apply it to their own situations, okay? Mine may be for supply chain, but in networking so much for all these years, I find when I share, and I've been paying it forward for a very long time, because when I was young, people helped me, and I'd like to help everyone I can. If you listen to what I did, don't say Roy did that, but think about the process or how he related to the situation or what he observed and see how you could apply that to your own situation. So regarding starting the company, okay, so I started working for a company, my first real job, and the two most important things you can bring to a situation is knowledge and experience. Well, I came with the knowledge, but not the experience. And it was an eye-opener, my first real job in the real world, okay? And I have an affinity towards numbers, so I was hired for a purchasing and inventory control position. But a couple of months later, the company hired a warehousing consultant. Little did I know when I started with that company, we would be experiencing hypergrowth for the next 10 years. And we grew tenfold in 10 years. And if you've lived the experience, like I've lived hypergrowth, I can share that with anyone else in my consulting practice that is going through hypergrowth. Again, I talked about knowledge and experience. If you haven't experienced hypergrowth, like you can't read how to play golf in a book and you can't read how to manage, monitor, execute in hypergrowth without experiencing it, okay? Mm-hmm. So I was, again, I was with the company 2 months and I'm working with this consultant and I don't like anything he's doing. And the short of it, I went to the president of the company and said, I don't like what he's doing. And he said to me, you didn't know what a pallet was 3 months ago. Learn something from the experienced man. So I started taking notes, real short version, brought them to the president. And after a long July 4th weekend, they called a meeting and said, I don't know what's going on here, but the kid knows more than the consultant who's running the project. And this is how I learned. This is what I was born to do. 10 years later, I was going to learn, and consulting is how I'm supposed to do it. Okay. So what happens is I see situations that, quite frankly, people don't see. I see things people don't see, and I create things they can't imagine. Again, that's part of my magic. And what I'm suggesting to the viewers is you're going to know what your magic is and make sure you use your magic and apply it to the situations you're in. So we did that project with the consultant, And now it's 3 years later, and the president comes into me and says, your plan didn't work. It's a 5-year plan. We outgrew it in 3 years. Again, we were doing a hypergrowth thing. And I said, good, don't sell so much. That's Roy being Roy, okay? And what was happening is, I said, that was the other guy's work. Tell me what you need and I'll take care of it. And he told me what he was going to do. And he told me what the resources were. And I came back to him and said, it can't work. And this was the birth of the operational growth plan that came out of my thought process, okay? So what happens is every company has a marketing growth plan, but what a company needs is an operational growth plan to ensure that the growth plan is going to work, or to show where the shortfalls are, to either ramp down the aggressiveness of the growth plan, or you increase the resources to ensure success. And what that allows one to do is model over the course of the growth period, and again, supply chain, how much space I'm going to need at what cost, what equipment it will cost, what staffing it will cost, what IT resources and capabilities it will cost, and what's most important, what systems and processes must be in place. So as volume requirements increase to meet your customers' demands, you're always ready and prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So when I meet with clients now, we develop an operational growth plan that they participate in, but also just as important, I create monitoring tools. So if they start to grow faster, they may get automation sooner. They start to slow down, they're going to be the first ones to stop money going into recession, because when they have this plan, no matter what happens, they know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and when it's going to cost them. Okay, so this is a key feature of my consulting practice that doesn't exist out there for the most part, because I don't go into other companies that have operational growth plans. The other key experience I had working for that company, it gets transferred to all my clients and all my projects. Again, I'm a numbers person, and I'm looking at them saying, we have all this stuff that doesn't sell, why? And the second question is, they told me we keep 2 months worth of inventory. Why do we have 2 years or 2 millenniums? And that got me developing a whole bunch of scientific processes to determine what products a company should be selling that they can make money selling, and how do you keep that inventory down to the level it's supposed to be. And again, I know all the reasons why you have too much inventory. You go to Las Vegas to a show special and you buy a bunch of stuff you never intended to have. You put 2 more pallets on the truck to get truckload rate, and you have a whole bunch of stuff you never intended to have. And over the years, your warehouse is filling up with stuff you never intended to have. So as part of our process, we scientifically determine with the client what they should be selling. We work with them so they learn how not to increase the inventory beyond the goal. So what happens now is the client is going through less space because they have less stuff. Less space means I'm going through faster. My service levels are going way up. And that means less time, which means less people, which needs less equipment. So by doing the product mix inventory study, what we've created is you're increasing customer service dramatically, and you are reducing costs for space, inventory, staff, and equipment. Now, when Warren Buffett talks about buying a company, he wants a protective moat for his company. And the protective moat is, you can't touch me on product, service, or cost. We just created that for our clients. So the result of doing the growth study and the product mix study, our clients beat the competition every time, and they're increasing cash flow exponentially. Okay, I'll talk about the other side of the project, designing, distribution, and manufacturing later on, but this is the key to our growth and our success. Okay, so again, when I started the company, I said, we're going to be different, we're going to be creative, and we're going to outwork everybody else. So I'm suggesting to the viewers out there, what I created is key differentiators, those studies that didn't exist out there. What key differentiators can you create for your business that you can use so you can sell these to your potential clients, customers, so you'll beat the competition every time?
Right, right.
And that's one of the reasons, several reasons why we're here for 38 years.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
So over those 38 years, you've worked with many, many different companies and businesses, Roy, and I gather some were receptive for taking your advice, but others were resistant. You know, the old story, well, we've always done it this way, which we've all heard so many times. So how do you go about changing the no's to a yes, or even preventing the no's in the first place?
Okay, so what we have is a situation where, let's say, I don't care what you're selling, you're going to visit the company, and what you have to be wary of is, I call them the silent assassins.
Yeah.
The people that will no change, cover your fanny. You're not invading my territory. We can't spend money on that. So what I'm having happen, what I arrange is that when I'm making that initial meeting, not only do I want the decision maker, the business owner, the president to be there, but I want the vice president of operations, the vice president of marketing, vice president of operations, vice president of finance, all the people that when you've made that presentation to the decision maker and he goes back to them later and they're going to deep six you because they don't want you there, they're now in front of you. And when you present them with nuggets that they can't say no to, they can't say no to the president.
Right.
So what are we doing for the president? Where the president is going to have a growth plan where for the first time in their lives, he or she, no matter what happens, they're going to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and what it's going to cost them. The CFO can't complain because we're going to reduce the costs for space, staff, inventory, and space staff, inventory, and equipment. Sorry.
Equipment. Yeah.
Okay. The CFO can't complain because we reduce costs. Vice president, CMO or vice president of marketing can't complain because he's got the best product with the best service at the lowest cost. The CEO, the vice president of operations can complain because he's streamlined operation. He's totally outperforming the competition. So you've cut the feet out of underneath those that would deep six you later on by having them there. And I will postpone a meeting if they can't be there, because I don't need the CFO telling the president we can't afford it after I'm gone when he hasn't heard what's going to happen or she hasn't heard what's going to happen. Okay.
Right.
And the close of the meeting for all of you, no, we're not selling something. In my case, you're not going to find a better place to increase your internal ROI than in doing this project. So
Right. That's answered that one very nicely. Thank you for that.
let me give you a couple more that's really important, though. You've just been told no.
Yep.
So I meet with the president of the company. He says, we don't need you. I'm going to do the project myself. So I said to him, good, then I'll be the president. He says to me, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've run companies before. I've done both jobs. You've only done the president's job. You haven't done my job. And I know that it's going to take 20 hours a day to do both. And you're going to be tired and you're going to be stretched thin and you're not going to do either job well. So since you can't do both, you take first choice, either be the president or the consultant. I'm suggesting you be the president. He looks at me and goes, you know what, you're right. Okay. I could give you more examples of that, but I want to leave more time for other stuff. Okay?
Sure.
So,
No, that's good. That's good.
yeah, once you've been told no, there's no risk you can't take. I mean,
So-
no squared is the same as no.
That's true.
I got to throw a quick one in before Kathleen asks you a question. You know, I love your attitude and your negotiating strategy. I'm surprised you didn't go into politics. I mean, you would have done well.
I'd rather deal with honest people.
Good one. Kathleen, over to you.
So Roy, how has the supply chain management been impacted by the coronavirus restrictions?
Well, one of the most interesting things, you know, like I said, we network to grow our business as consultants. And so what's happened is when I meet a group of people in a networking group, 2 years ago, everybody would say, what's supply chain? Okay. Everybody knows what supply chain is now.
Yeah.
You can't get the chips for your car. You couldn't get toilet paper. Supply chains have been interrupted substantially. In my particular case, on Monday, March 9th, 2020, I was in New York City making a presentation to the board to do a major consulting project. They said, we'll get back to you Friday. They shut everything down Thursday. And when I spoke to them Friday, they said, too much uncertainty. We don't know what we're doing. We can't do the project right now. By the way, we still haven't done a project. So if you think there's uncertainty that affects stock market and business in general, well, in supply chain, it's even worse because you don't know when people are going to stop buying what you have and you're stuck with the extra stuff. Or in this case, they want more cars, they want more toilet paper, and you can't keep it in stock. So again, the most important things are to have your systems, to have your growth plan, to have your monitoring systems, so at least you can have some predictability as to what may be happening from your data and take that and run with it. And again, whatever business you're in, data. You must have good data and you must understand how it works and what to do with it. And if you don't, please learn it. The data is the key to success in just about every business.
Interesting. So I got one for you, and that ties very much into what you're talking about with supply chain. And obviously it's changing, but in my experience with big companies and small, I've found that the glamour divisions like marketing, production, and accounting tend to get well treated, and warehousing and distribution always treated as the Cinderellas of the company, and that leads to all sorts of problems. Is that an accurate reflection, or are you managing to change that?
Well, I personally can't change anything. I can just help my clients get through it the best way possible. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. For the longest time, until very recently, a number of years ago, I had made a sales call to a large division of one of the major companies on a stock exchange. I will not mention their name because it was a long time ago and I don't want to embarrass them. And they had many buildings and they didn't know which product was in which building. And I'm presenting to the group that fixes that, which was part of supply chain, was part of marketing. Marketing started it, supply chain makes sure it happens. And they said, we don't have money for stuff like that. And they went through the project. Now, though, everyone understands what's the sense of selling it if you can't deliver it or you can't deliver it properly.
Sure.
So supply chain is finally starting to take its proper place in recognition among the companies that, again, it's vital. And if you don't take care of the back end, the front end is irrelevant. Okay, you can market it great, you can sell it great, and if you can't deliver it, no good.
No good, for sure.
Do you believe, Roy, that outsourced warehousing and distribution will replace in-house operations in many smaller businesses?
I believe that's definitely going to be the case moving forward. In fact, it's been the case recently, okay? If you wanted to, you're starting a new business and you need a warehousing operation or manufacturing operation, the cash outlay to get the space, to get the equipment, to do the whole hiring process, to do the training process, to fill the building with inventory, whether it's raw materials to manufacture a product to resell. The costs are tremendous and they go up exponentially every decade, if you will. Where if you have a public warehouse or a third-party warehouse, all that is there already, and your cost is their layer of profit. Okay, so if I'm not spending money on getting a building and I'm not spending money on equipment and so forth and so on, I can spend that money on growing my business, on marketing, etc. The most important thing, though, is I lived for 10 years. That first business I worked for, we were housed in a public warehouse. So I knew the good, bad, and ugly. And if it's ugly, it could get very ugly because now you're entrusting your product, your business to an outside company that you have no control of. Okay, so the worst thing that could happen is a mismatch. If the software doesn't talk to each other between your company and theirs, if you think you're going to be a big customer and they have big customers, then all your needs are going to be pushed to the back. If you don't really understand everything they do, they can do, they have to do completely, and you're going to hire them and they understand it all, you're at a disadvantage from the very beginning, okay? But at the same time, you need them because you're not going to spend all the money in that for that cost, okay?
Mhm.
So a request for proposal that I did for a major pharmaceutical manufacturer that was thinking of outsourcing their warehousing. The request for proposal was 62 pages long.
Wow.
Whoa.
Okay, it covered, this is how we do business. How do you do business? How do we connect with you? Who's your management team and how do we communicate them? Tell me anything and everything about your software and how we're going to connect together. Anything and everything, things go wrong, how you're going to take care of me. What are your systems and processes to make sure you're going to handle my account economically and I'm not overpaying for labor, overpaying for space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't dot every I and cross every T, and again, it's like a legal agreement. If nothing goes wrong, so what? But if something goes wrong, boy, you can be in deep trouble. I was working with a new business recently, and they were negotiating with a new public warehouse. First, they called me in to check out the old public warehouse, and they were failing them miserably. That was my study, and I showed them how, why, where, and how they had to move. That the most important thing, they would never be capable of doing what they needed. Negotiating with the new one, they had phrases in there like, if we have a dispute and you don't pay the bill, we can seize your goods.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how are they ever going to get paid if they take your goods away? Anyway,
That's right.
I took them through the whole process and they renegotiated. So it was fair to both sides, not totally one-sided. If I was not with that company negotiating with them for them, they never would have known what to do with that. So
Right.
again, it's legal, it's technical, it's working together, it's a chemistry between the companies. So yes, you need them, but if you don't do it right, it could be much worse than you can imagine.
Sure, sure. There's two angles to this as well, in that by using a third party or public warehouse, especially a small manufacturer, you're converting quite a potential fixed cost to variable costs, right? So that's going to affect your break even as well.
Yes and no, okay. So you could say, yes, equipment is fixed cost, labor is a fixed cost, et cetera, okay. But again, you think your labor is a fixed cost, but if volume goes up, you're going to spend more money on labor. You're going to do the same thing with the outside warehouse, okay? Actually, once you negotiate with the outside third party and you have your costs fixed, those are contractual and those are actually more stable than what costs could be happening within your own business.
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm getting at, they're related to volume, though. Whereas if you build your own huge warehouse and that's a fixed cost.
Yeah, but if it's based on a rate, okay, so I'm paying this much per pallet or I'm paying this much per hour per labor, as long as you have in your contract what that rate is and it's acceptable to you from the beginning and throughout the contract. So of course you're going to pay more if you do more, okay?
Sure.
Now the other part also is if I take a building now, let's say I need a 20,000 square foot building right now. Well, I'm not going to take a 20,000 square foot building if I'm a startup because I'm going to outgrow it right away. So I'm going to have to take a 40,000 square foot building and pay for that extra space that I won't be using for 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
That's overhead. Yeah.
Public warehouse allows you to take more space as you grow. So again, it's flexibility.
Absolutely. The other one that comes to mind is if you have a limited product range and relatively low value orders, if you're trying to deliver those yourself, you're doing many miles per dollar of value delivered compared to a public distribution outlet, right? Who's filling his truck every time.
It's not quite like that, okay? Because if the key is, if you have many orders that are small orders, okay, and you have a lot of space to cover, here it's the system, the process that makes the difference.
Right.
Either I can do a batch pick and pick many orders at the same time to increase the volume, not have to go through a whole building to get a few items each time, or I could do a zone pick where each person picks a bunch of orders in that zone. The key is every time you travel, you want to retrieve as much stuff as possible. So you're not spending, look, in any business, there's direct labor. I'm picking, I'm loading, I'm receiving, there's indirect labor. I'm walking, I'm searching, I'm writing. okay? And the goal is to have as high a percentage of direct labor as possible, because that's getting you return on investment.
Right.
The indirect labor, walking, searching, is just wasting time and costing you
Sure.
money.
Costing you
Okay.
money, absolutely.
So you want to make sure that the public warehouse, like if I'm working with them, I want to see how they're picking. I don't want them to be walking around and gather small orders
No.
and then charge me more for labor. So
Sure.
it's knowing how it should be done and making sure it's done. Anything we do in our practice is called best practice. There's a best way to pick orders. There's a best way to unload the truck. And what we do is we make sure everyone, whether it's inventory in the office, purchasing, unloading a truck, best practice, because if everyone is doing it a different way, only one person is doing it the best way, and everyone else is costing you money.
So Roy, you've probably touched on this briefly in our previous question, but if a company contacts you, can you walk us through the process you would take them through in order to help them? So if I'm a new client, I pick up the phone, call you, and I say, Roy, I think I need your help. What's the first thing that happens between us?
Okay. So the first thing that happens is I'm asking obviously a lot of different questions to learn what the issues are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the issues are created by the company themselves. Sometimes the issues are outside, their vendors or their customers have issues. Sometimes the customers has the best intentions, but they don't have enough experience either in manufacturing or warehousing. When I visit a company and I ask the warehouse manager, how do we pick orders? And they go, everyone does it differently. No. Okay. And in every company, as you all know, it comes down from the top. The leadership comes from the top. Now, in many of the companies I visit, the president is too busy, so he gives it to the vice president. And the vice president is too busy, so he gives it to the manager. And the manager is too busy, so he gives it to the supervisor. And the supervisor is too busy, so the lowest common denominator is deciding how the job is going to be done.
Mhm.
This happens with very, very busy companies quite often. Okay. So now who's deciding how it's going to be done? The guy that at least cares. Okay. Because what a company should be happening is the leadership comes from the top, and I call it domains. If you work for a company, the most important domain is the whole company. After the company may be your division, then maybe your group, then maybe your person. But as soon as you're putting your personal needs before the group, or the group needs before the company, management issues galore. Okay. So what I'm doing in the sales call is learning everything I can. I definitely want to drop by and take a look at what's going on and meet these people in person. And of course, that's called a sales call, gratis, will never cost anybody anything. I don't have an advertising budget like the major consulting firms. So when I go on that sales call or visit, as I walk through the facility, distribution or manufacturing center, I'm going to be making suggestions, quick fixes on the trip, so they'll get immediate benefit from seeing who I am and how I can help them on the quote sales call. And that's for two reasons. Number one, so they learn what's happening there. And number two, they learn that I have ways to help them that will not be burning large holes in their pockets unless it's necessary. Okay. Then what we started, okay, Roy, let's work together. So we started with before we do anything, I have data information requests that I've developed over the years for every single client. And I send that to them before I even make the initial orientation meeting to kick off the project. And this is all the key information I'm going to need, whether it be space, picking volumes, shipping volumes, manufacturing volumes, staffing and staffing costs, equipment and equipment costs, layout, anything and everything that's going on there. I'd like to be looking at that before I walk in the door, so I'm better prepared to deal with what's happening. Right. Then we start off with an orientation meeting, okay, where I learn about the company. This is who we are. This is what we're doing. Again, we have the data requests, so I'm going to ask all sorts of questions about growth. So we will end up doing that operational growth plan eventually, not eventually, real soon, okay? And I'm learning what makes the company tick. So I could visit this happened, I won't give you the long version, 2 companies, same industry, same product, same geographic location, and they did everything differently.
Mhm.
Okay, one, everything's automated. One, call my company, you speak to a real person. I mentioned before, one wanted zone picking, one wanted batch picking. One wants to dump peanuts in a box. One says, no peanuts in your living room floor. We're shrink wrapping. Same business, same product, same location. Okay, so you have to learn the chemistry. Certain companies are have an aversion to taking lots of space. Others have an aversion to spending a lot of money on people. So you have to have you can't give a solution that's dissonant with what makes the client comfortable. So you got to learn what the comfort zones are and how they like to work.
Right.
Then we take a walk through the operation as part of the and of course I get the key information about growth and future plans, et cetera, that can only come from the top leadership of the company. Then we take an operations review, anything and everything that can happen from the time the product hits the receiving door till it goes out the shipping door. And again, we're looking at space being used, process and systems, staffing, equipment, and IT support, paperwork, anything and everything that happens. And what happens is once I review the whole operation, I write up the operations review, and it's going to either make specific recommendations or give viable options with the pros and cons of each if there's no clear recommendation. Get the operations review, and what comes out of it is quick fixes, short-term recommendations and long-term recommendations, and they could either do it themselves or hire me to implement it with them or for them.
Okay, that's a very good picture. Thank you. My burning question, I ask all successful guys with long experience, and you're a really good example of that. If I was to ask you for one characteristic that differentiates successful business leaders from the average, what would your word be?
A couple of words. They have a vision for the company. They have to know who they're going to serve, how they're going to serve them, where they want it to go. They have to be resourceful. They have to have a drive to succeed, and they have to listen and delegate and use all the resources available. It's not one word, it's a combination of words, that combination. Okay. Like I said, when I started my company, I was going to be different, I was going to be creative, and I was going to outwork everyone. That's for my company. But in general, vision, resourceful, drive to succeed, listen, delegate, and use resources.
Listen. Very good.
Excellent.
That's great. Thank you.
Well,
Kathleen.
it looks like we are out of time, Roy, and it's been a pleasure having you on our show today. Thank you so much. And I am hoping to have you back as well. So,
well, thank you, Kathleen and Peter. It's been a pleasure for me also. I really enjoyed this, and
Good.
I hope your viewers enjoy it as much as we have.
There's a lot of good stuff in there. But before we go, how can people contact you?
Sure. Okay. So I'm Roy Strauss. My company is the Strauss Consulting Group. My email address, let's use this one, info@S as in Strauss, C as in consulting, and G as in group, and then before and you. So it's info@scg4u.com, and my website, www.scg4u.com. And I have a longer version, but just go into LinkedIn and type in Roy Strauss.
Great. We will put all that on the video. Thank you very much.
Great. And thank you again.
And thank you. And thank you also very much for tuning into our show. Once again, we do appreciate your comments, so please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.